So, what's the most important part of a book? In my opinion, it's the characters. And the most important characters are the main characters. Hi, I'm Andrew, and I'm on a fantastical journey through books. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my top 5 all-time fantasy characters. So, a little bit about the rules I'm setting for myself before I get into my top 5. The main one is I'm not allowed to pick characters from the same series more than once, and I'm counting the Cosmere as an entire series. So I won't be stacked with Cosmere characters from the Stormlight Archive and the Mistborn series or Elantris or anything like that, because I can only pick one. Also, I have some honorable mentions, and these are usually the characters that I had to kick out because of that rule. So let's get started with my honorable mention characters. Also, before I get to this, possible spoilers from some books, because some of these characters on this list might not start off as main characters, but as the series progresses become main characters. You'll also know, if that's the case, that they survive through books to become main characters. So be warned, there's light spoilers possibly, because characters I'll mention will eventually possibly change, becoming a side character at first and then becoming a main character. So first up, for my honorable mentions, and this is slightly cheating, though the author himself has said that this is sci fantasy, not just science fiction, and that's Hadrian Marlowe. And the reason why he's made my honorable mentions list is I just haven't read enough Sun Eater to really make him make my top 5 list. I'm only up to Howling Dark. I'm in the middle of reading the Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 1, and so since I have not read books 3 and onward, I really can't put him into a top 5 yet, though he is like right there. I could feel that if these book series goes the way I think it will be, Hadrian Marlowe will probably push his way into my top 5 main characters of all time, with the caveat that even Christopher Ruocchio says that it's a sci fantasy book. The next couple of characters are because of that rule I set. So some characters that get honorable mentions: Aragorn from Lord of the Rings is one of my favorite main characters, but I've got another one from Lord of the Rings in my top 5 to kind of hint where things are going that surpasses Aragorn. We've got this king who doesn't want to be and goes on to greatness in the book. Next up is from Mistborn, because I can only include one Cosmere character, and that's Elend Venture from the first era of Mistborn. This is a character that kind of starts off as a side character in the first book, pseudo possible love interest to Vin, and as the series goes on, he becomes an integral part of the series. And I just love how intellectual he is. He's definitely my favorite character in the first era. He is this really compassionate ruler in a world of kind of scumbaggy people and doesn't want to be. And I just think he's such an interesting character as he's trying to lead the people in this weird, dark world that he's a lord of but doesn't really want to be. Keeping in the Cosmere, then, my next honorable mention is Kaladin. And you'll be thinking, whoa, Kaladin's not your main character? That must mean another possible Stormlight character made the list. We'll see as we get to my top 5. But once again, that kind of paladin character, that protector of others, I tend to gravitate toward those honorable paladin characters. And so in the Stormlight Archive, Kaladin is my favorite character. And then to go to the First Law trilogy with my last honorable mention, it is Glokta. And I know Glokta tends to be everybody's favorite in the First Law trilogy. I like Glokta, which is why he's in my honorable mentions. But there's another character on my list that I like a little bit more. So let's go ahead and get into my top 5. We'll start with 5 and go all the way to my favorite fantasy main character of all time. And with number 5, we're headed back to the First Law world, and it's actually Logen Ninefingers. So this character is a Northman. He is really tough. He's got this kind of mysterious / tortured past. When we first are introduced to Logen Ninefingers, he's off kind of in a campsite. He's talking with spirits, and he's thrust into the story of the First Law trilogy, trying to be a good man in a bad world, knowing that he's also a bad man in that bad world. And I find his character so interesting because of that kind of dynamic of Logan Ninefingers and then the Bloody Nine. Because as you read, everybody is scared of this guy. And when you're in his head, he doesn't want to be scary, but he knows he is. And you keep reading and you try to find out what is this guy doing that everyone is terrified of the Bloody Nine. And then you read through and you get that story of him as you go. My number 4 pick for my favorite main character in a fantasy is cheating a little bit again because it's not technically strict fantasy genre, and that is Carl from Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is lit RPG, but there are definitely fantasy elements to it. There's also science fiction elements as you read through the series. And for Carl, we've got this typical everyday guy who is living in his ex-girlfriend's apartment with his cat when aliens show up and he's thrust into a dungeon and has to survive. But what I really love about this character, and technically I guess Princess Donut is an honorable mention character too. They're almost like not able to be divided, but I love Princess Donut, but Carl's character I really find interesting because he is an average Joe who ends up leading this ragtag group of people reluctantly trying to get through the dungeon. And you could just see at times the frustration and the I don't want to have to do this, but deep down that guy's got a heart of gold and he will fight and die for anyone while doing comedy along the way. So we got at spot 4, Carl from Dungeon Crawler Carl. Spot number 3 now. This is where we go back to the Cosmere. And yes, my favorite Cosmere character is Wexilium Ladrian from Mistborn Era 2. No, not Dalinar, not Shallan, not Adolin from Stormlight Archive. I know there are not many people that love Wexilium Ladrian, but he is my favorite Cosmere character by far. I love this idea of a lawman that's got a past that he's kind of running from. And when we start off in Alloy of Law with the prologue, he loses his love and kind of breaks him. Like, he is this man of law. He is going to go out to the frontier and he's going to be the lawman. And his love dies and he returns back to the city still with that lawman mentality. And I love kind of the dichotomy of Mistborn Era 1 versus 2, where in Era 1 you're dealing with, hey, we're criminals and we're trying to take down the big bad government. And in Era 2, we're following a team of the law, that it is the government, and they're trying to do what is good when possibly the government itself is also still kind of corrupt, but they're working within the system instead of trying to take it down. And I think Ladrian, Waxilium Wax, is kind of the embodiment of this idea of just doing good and trying to work within the system. Like, I took the test for Stormlight, what Radiant Order you are. I'm a Skybreaker, so I've got to gravitate to the guy that's all about justice in Era 2 of Mistborn. And I just find him fascinating. And as the series progresses, and these are a little bit mild spoilers for Lost Metal, so if you haven't read the series yet, maybe skip ahead and I'll try to put something on the screen to say, hey, you can tune back in so you don't get this. But when Wax becomes a dad later on in the series, like, I just resonated that myself as a dad, and he's like trying to do his job as a lawman while also being a family man now. And I just love that character. I think like he embodies everything that kind of Kaladin has, with also kind of like the stakes being on his shoulders as he feels like it, and he's trying to do justice while also being an honorable person in a Wild West setting. It's so much fun to read that character. All right, so this brings me to number 2 of my favorite fantasy characters of all time. And he had to make this list. As you can see by my bookshelf, number 2 is Harry Dresden from the Dresden Files. I've read so many Dresden Files books. I'm up to, I think, book 15 now of what is currently 17 out. And I believe the next one's supposed to come next year, but I'm not sure. But I spend so much time with this character, and there's so much growth that Jim Butcher has for Dresden throughout the series that he's such a fascinating character to read about. In the early books, he is just this kind of down on his luck, private eye wizard, and you read it, and then one of the big criticisms of the Dresden Files is Harry Dresden himself, that he is, misogynistic, and he is rude to women and sexist and like all of these things, which maybe is a little bit of Butcher himself into the books. But I do think that there is a lot of character growth with Harry as you read through the books, and that sexist attitude of the male gaze goes not away, but it gets significantly less. And I feel like as you're reading, and maybe this is me reading into it, it's him growing as a person. So you get that, like, I don't know if I like this character very much. But by the time you hit the midway point through this very long series, that takes a very much back seat. And there's times where he struggles with his past self and ways he treated people and trying to be a better person. And then I just love the fact that this guy is a super nerd living in the real world and as a wizard. Like, he's constantly making pop culture references like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all of these things that I love, he makes a reference to. So the fact that you get so much time spent with him, and the fact that it's first person means you really get into his head, is makes him such a great character to me. And I'm so excited to get caught up in the series and see where things go, especially with that new book that I think is coming out next year. So that brings me to my number 1 fantasy main character of all time. And that character is Samwise Gamgee of Lord of the Rings. And someone might be like, whoa, Samwise is a side character. He's not the main character or a main character. I'm like, no. Sam is not just a main character, he is the main character. This guy, this hobbit from Hobbiton, loves his friends so much, especially Frodo. He puts them on his back, literally, and carries them up Mount Doom. Like, this guy has such a heart of gold. He is persevered through so much. And when Frodo went down, Sam's the guy. He is your friend that you want to have no matter what. He'll have your back. Even when you treat him poorly, he won't give up on you. And the resilience that Sam shows makes him by far the best character. And who wouldn't want to be a gardener in Hobbiton? Or the Shire. You read about all his works there. It's such a quaint place. You just go in the garden and relax and eat food, and Sam is great. By far the best fantasy character of all time, at least on my list. So that's my top 5 all-time fantasy main characters. I do plan to do a video in the future where I'm going to go through my top 5 side characters, those characters that maybe come up once in a while, or aren't a POV character in a book that I absolutely adore. And I might cheat a little bit and put some characters that aren't fully fantasy in there like I did with this one. But check that out for a future video. So, in the comments down below, how about you tell me who your top 5 main characters are? What'd you think of my list? Did I get it wrong? Is there a character that you think is a side character that I put as a main character? Should I not have cheated with Carl by putting a lit RPG that's like partially science fiction in there? Let me down below start a dialogue. I want to talk about these characters. Maybe you can introduce me to a new character that I haven't read yet that could, as I read those books, enter into at least my honorable mentions, if not maybe knock some of these 5 off of the list. So don't forget comment down below, subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you as I continue a fantastical journey.